the Surfaces webinar. Thank you again for letting us be part of you and taking the time to take a little bit of time out of your day to join us for the webinar. Today, I guess we're going to be talking a lot more about just all about the surfaces, how to install, when and where to use them. So we're going to go ahead and present you a quick little presentation. During the presentation, again, we just want to make sure that your mics are off and your cameras are off. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can go ahead and use the chat. So you can go ahead and type in the question that you may have, and then we'll answer them according to. If it's a little more complex, then we'll go ahead and wait towards the end, and then we can answer it with a little bit more in depth. Other than that, let's go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today on the Surface webinar, decking, sheet goods, however you want to call it. We want to let you guys, we want to help you guys out today and give you an overall with the way that we're using surfaces, the types of surfaces we're using, and when and where to use them. So along with me, my partner in crime today is Simon Lejoule. Some of you may know him as Simon. So he is a project manager, and actually I want to pick his brain today a little bit because he comes from the plastics industry, the plastics background. So just real quick introduction. Thank you for joining me today. And if you could just kind of get us started with the different types of surfaces that we use here at Flexpipe. So essentially, we know that we're using the Hdpes. So we have those in 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. We have the 1/8 inch as well with the metal exterior. And then also the types of acrylics. So basically any of those types of things, we can go ahead and take it from there.
Perfect, thanks Esteban. So to start, our most versatile decking would be the Hdpe. The advantage of the Hdpe, it's easy to clean. When you remove the sharp edges, it's really safe for your workstation, shelves, and everything because it doesn't leave any residue. So it's really a really safe substrate, but it's also easy to slide stuff on it. So let's say right now here we have the textured one, the flat one. So if you want to move things around, perfect plastic for that, and it's economical. Like you get good value for the price you're paying. Comes in 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, 1/2 inch. So that's a go-to. That's really easy.
Which is really, just to make sure everybody understands, those are the thicknesses that we are dealing with most of the time here. 9 out of 10 times, this is the go-to. It's either going to be whether it's a 1/2 inch, do we need it to be as thick as a 1/2 inch, or is the 1/2 inch too heavy? Can we drop it down to a 1/4 inch if we can get away with it, right? It all depends on what the situation is, right?
Because if you need, you could go up to 3/4, an inch thick.
Right, you can always double them up as well too.
Yeah, 1/2 inch is what we keep in stock, ship the next day. So that's the
right on.
The easy go-to. That would be our first choice.
Which is also in black, and the black one, like you mentioned, it does have a bit of a texture to it. So I guess it really depends on the scenario which you need it for.
Yeah, especially if your tendency for a work surface is scratching a lot. Yeah. Maybe go with the textured one. Because you won't see the scratch as much as the really
cool.
The other one. So next up would be the plastic plywood. Pretty convenient. It's really stiff, so you don't need as much support. It's perfect if you need to attach guides or templates on your workstation.
Yeah, if everything fixes real nice into this wood, right? It's got a lot to be able to grab on, so it's definitely a solid, right?
And just leave a little hole. The plastic, it's a bit different. It kind of pops up, so that's good for that, and it's paintable. So if you want to have a pattern or something for your assembly, so that would be like the classic plywood. Everybody knows plywood. So
the takeaway here, I imagine, is that if you're thinking about it this way, right, there is less maintenance when you're dealing with the plastic surfaces, right? You can go ahead and just wipe that off. Essentially, with the wood, if you're trying to think about a stain or you're trying to seal it, or depending on how much you need to work on top of this, if it's a work surface or not, again, it does require a little bit more extra work to think about. So that's the only thing there.
Yep. Next up would be the pegboard, the plastic pegboard.
Yeah, popular
pretty much
one.
the same as the metal one. the main advantage, it's easy to clean, but the metal one too, but it's not dentable. So something bangs on it, you won't see a dent for the rest of the pegboard's life. So it's plastic, so it will absorb it.
So it's forgiving.
Yeah, exactly. And the other advantage is you could probably change a pattern if you really want to, because it's plastic. It's not like as complicated as metal, but it's pretty straightforward.
And this one here, I mean, it's great, right? You can put this basically anywhere you want to go ahead, or any type of situation where you need to hang anything. So it's very easy. Again, all of these cut quite simple. We'll go over that in a little bit, but again, this is a popular one, and essentially you can do a lot with this type of pegboard, right?
Yeah. A really popular one is the Alu-panel. The substrate is actually plastic within 2 aluminum sheets. So it's compressed, so it's pretty rigid. It's really thin, so perfect for dividers, shelves, and it's really economical. The downside would be if you have heavy stuff, you could bend it.
Yeah,
so,
it does tend to bend,
exactly.
mark up a little bit quicker on
or
those.
you could, you know, like if you drop something.
Right.
But if your regular uses, like small parts, small boxes, perfect to slide on. And
Right.
it's easy to work with. You can cut that with an X-Acto knife, and you can fold it. So it's really convenient.
Oh yeah, you do like you would say essentially kind of score the one
Exactly.
side so that you can then ply it and take shape in that sense. That's actually cool. I've never used it in that sense, but it does seem to be makes sense for that actually. So I want to try that actually.
So it's
That's cool.
pretty easy to work with.
Again, right, so if you're putting things on top, might not be the best one if it's very heavy items that can essentially be banging the surface at the same time. So sometimes I think more about these type of, what do we call this, aluminium cladding? Aluminium, yep. So why not, instead of doing this for surfaces, maybe we can think of these as dividers essentially. So you can go ahead and use these to divide spaces and things like that. Again, yes, you can use it for surfaces, for supports and things like that. It's just consider the amount of weight that you're going to be placing on top, right? The longer this gets, the more it deflects, so the more supports you're going to definitely need throughout. So that's the one thing that you can get away with more is with the thicker surfaces, is that you can use less supports as opposed to more when it's thinner. But again, very useful surface, and again, you can find many different ways of using this as well.
Next up would be like the clear one. We have acrylic and polycarbonate. So acrylic is anything that needs to be clear. Right now we have like a protective thing on it. So the advantage of this acrylic is 7 times stronger than glass. So that's something it's good to know. It's pretty strong. You could have shelves with it, you know, especially if you have a darker area. Put your shelf in acrylic, the light will go through, so your work surface is going to still be, you know, lit. It's not like it's breakable. Like I said, 7 times better than glass, but it's still something that it's breakable. So you have heavy stuff, I wouldn't suggest it unless you go with a thicker gauge, like, you know, ½ inch, ¾ inch. Maintenance wise, it's not too bad. You need to keep it clean. There's some product that you can buy. Never use alcohol product on this.
Oh no?
Same with polycarbonate, because it will leave a ghost, you know.
Okay,
like,
that haze?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I was wondering what that was.
So you just use warm dish soap.
Right.
That's fine. You're gonna clean it well. So
There you
that's
go.
what
That's
I would
it.
suggest for that. Anything that needs to be clear, you need to see through. You could have windows. You know, let's say you have multiple workstation, so you want to see the other worker, but you want the vision. COVID was really useful for that, adding like a...
Right, these were definitely used a lot, right? There was a moment in which they were out of stock, and we were having a hard time finding anything that was an acrylic or a polycarbonate or anything that was clear in that matter.
Adding a guard, yeah.
Yeah, it's true, very true.
But it could be like a safety thing. But if it's safety, I would go with polycarbonate.
Okay.
Unbreakable.
All right.
So let's say you have something attached to a machine, and you don't want like your worker to put their hands there. So that's best thing for guards.
So that's a preventive panel guard.
You see what's on the other side?
Yeah, so very nice. Definitely a full 1/4 inch, right? A solid 1/4 inch, as opposed to, like you mentioned, this here, which is 1/8 of an inch. Big difference, but right, I can see how this can definitely be the one that's going to be the protection for that type
same
of
thing, divider, guards. The downside, it's scratched easily. So that's why usually you use it vertically.
Right, as panels,
instead of
surface type.
Yeah, surface type, you know.
Right.
But the advantage is you can fold it like metal.
At longer
like a big
lengths.
metal folding machine. You use that.
Okay, so you can essentially ply it in that
Exactly,
sense. Okay,
exactly.
wow, I didn't realize
Up
that.
to 1/4 inch.
Wow.
3/8 is a bit thick. You will have like a big ripple or a big like
Little
bump.
bit?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Yeah, a little belly or something going
exactly.
on. Huh, interesting. Real quick, just to mention, right? So we're using these again. In this scenario here, we're using them for the posters in order to be able to have obviously the clear visual of the poster. But most importantly, really what I like about this is to use dry erase markers. And then essentially if we're missing something, we need to order something, we can always just circle it, put an X, make a note, whatever the case may be, and then erase it when you get it, type of thing. So again, just a very useful way as well to utilize the see-through aspect of these surfaces. So that's kind of the wrap there as far as the different types of surfaces. Again, you have to consider what you're using it for. Again, I always wanna mention this because I always say, why do we need things, right? You really want to go through that process of asking yourself as many times as you need to really find the true answer. Because sometimes I'll ask clients, customers, and things like that, why do you need a surface? And it turns out that essentially they never even really needed a surface. Exactly. So if you don't need a surface, then maybe you can get away with just using the modular system to create supports and dividers, which is a very nice way of doing it. Again, if we address the elephant in the room, we know that these surfaces, these sheet goods these days are running a little bit higher than usual. So again, we always want to think about the client, and again, we're all in it, so we want to make sure that economically it makes sense for what you're trying to do. So if you can get away with it, then do so. But there are situations where a surface is needed, so therefore this is why we have all these different options available. Now let's talk a little bit about, again, the different type of scenarios in which you're going to find this. I mean, we see these in all kinds of structures, right? We're going to look at workstations, we're going to look at shelvings, panels, dividers, carts, drawers. Man, there is an abundance. There's so many different ways of utilizing surfaces. It's just to make sure that it makes sense, so that we're not just spending money because we want to just spend money. So again, example here, Simone. So look, right, again, we're just using, ideally you want to think about surfaces on the top, like a workstation here, right? We're banging it up, we're working, we're making things, move around and things like that. Maybe a 1/4 inch is not the ideal kind of place for this type of scenario. So this is, again, a 1/2 inch surface. Makes pretty good sense for me here. It could always be thicker, but any thinner than this, I would be afraid to try to work on top of that. Another one here, sorry, real quick, is just the pull-out drawer slide. We're going to actually just move this here real quick. Just kind of get this out of the way so we can see this a little bit better here. So let's just drag it up. There we go. So you're going to say?
No, I was saying, like, after, because it will get worn out. So after a while, a good trick it would be just to flip it over.
Right.
Even if you see the attachment hole, it's not a big deal, So,
yeah, right, exactly.
So that's something people don't think about. They think, oh, okay, it's been
there is a second life to it should you just flip it over.
Don't be scared of
Right.
turning them around.
Aesthetically, it might not be the best, right? It already has been drilled through if in that case, but again, if it's all scratched up, banged up, and it's just a matter of flipping it over, why not, right? You're saving money, so I like it.
I was saying, like, let's say this cart here was beside a machine or another, like a conveyor belt or something like that. That's where you would use the acrylic or the polycarbonate to make sure nobody can put their finger. Let's say there was something going on behind, just to make sure. Or if they're dealing with like smaller parts, you want to make sure they don't fall out. Just put a guard.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing too fancy. Just good enough to make sure that the parts are not falling out.
Yeah.
So that's why we would use like the clear.
And I like what you mentioned, the clear, right? Because this is all about, again, what are we trying to do with the modular system? We want to have visibility. We want to be able to see through things. So this is really why we're trying to do this, right? We want to be able to see through everything, to be able to visually quickly pick up on whatever's going on. And that's really the nice thing about this acrylic here, like you said. So many different situations. Again, we have the 1/2 inch here that we're using for a pull-out drawer slide. Again, 1/2 inch gives us enough meat, enough surface thickness to be able to screw into it. So that's a really important thing that we're going to talk about now, and is basically the different types of scenarios, or the different types of installations most commonly seen. So we'll just move this out of the way here, and I'll bring back the my little sample set here. And we can go ahead and, again, the types of tools that we're using for the surfaces when we're installing, it's a combination of the drill. It's a combination of the drill, the impact drill with the different bit, right? Depending on the type of screw head you're using. We're using the drill with the different bits, right? We have an 1/8 inch bit, a 3/16. We have a depth finder, if you will, so we don't pierce directly through the surface, depending on what that is. And then we also use the countersink bit. So again, whether we're coming from the bottom, from the top, it's just a matter of choosing which way and then figuring out which is the best one for us. Ideally, typically, we're going to be dealing with many different scenarios. The first one I want to mention actually is when we're installing from the top. Again, this is something that we do a lot with surfaces that are 1/4 inch thick, right? If we have a surface that is too thin, we can't get anything underneath, essentially kind of like what we would do with a pipe clamp to secure on the structure, and then to be able to fix this here. We don't have enough meat to be able to hold this in place. So again, that's kind of why we want to think about using the 1/2 inch for that. Now, if you do have to use a surface such as a comelu, which is an 1/8 inch thick, or the 1/4 inch thick surface, and we want to come from the top, then it's a matter of basically piercing through the top of this here, right? We're going to pierce through that. We want to use shims to be able to retain that level all throughout your surface. And then again, we're going to pierce through all of this, through the pipe, to be able to essentially countersink that surface top, and then be able to go ahead and fix it all throughout your structure. Ideally creating contact points all through your structure, which is essentially solidifying even more this essential, for example, this table here that is fixed from the top. So right now this is as solid as it gets, right? It's got points everywhere. It's going to be very hard to rip this off. So that's what we're trying to do, is that we're going to be using a shim, and then usually we use the flathead 1 inch screw when we're dealing with that type of scenario, when we're coming from the top. Again, you can also do that with thicker surfaces if you needed to, right? If you have a workstation, a heavy duty workstation, might be a good idea to fix that from the top, so that again it holds its place and it stays where it needs to be. So if it's something really, really heavy, yeah, I would recommend to go ahead and just fix it directly to the structure.
Another trick, if you want to, let's say you want to build like a light table, you know, like with light underneath, or you want to fix any of these clear plastic, use brand new bit to drill, and then afterward use a torch to just eat the hole, to make sure they're not, because it's like micro chip on it, and while eating it, it will be longer, you know, it will last longer because it won't crack. You know, if you over tight, sometimes people installing acrylic, you see there's like cracks going,
yeah,
like a little sun going around, a little star.
Yeah.
If you eat your
kind of like a sunburst
exactly.
effect. So basically, that's what you're saying, is that you heat it up in order to eliminate this. Nice.
Not burn it, just quickly eat it.
Right.
And then you can choose same for
little torch,
yep,
one of those little kind of torches, right? Yep. Okay. But that's good, because it has happened to me in the past, and I realized that yeah, it's got that little kind of abrasive finish to it.
It will kind of seal the
kind of mold it back into it.
Yep.
Nice. So
same with cutting, always finishing blades. If you want to have a nice edge, the more teeth, the better for your cut, for anything plastic. That would be like your main. Even if you go with like a jigsaw or a portable.
Right. Yeah, actually, let's jump into that right now. So there are many different ways, but ideally what you want to do is essentially, hopefully, if you have a table saw, then it's going to be the most secure way of cutting surfaces, especially when you got to rip a 4x8 sheet, in those kind of scenarios where it's a heavy sheet of goods. So basically you want to be able to have the surfaces to be able to cut nice and smoothly. If you can't do it this way, then the next thing would be to have the portable saw along with some guides in order to be able to give yourself the dimension to be able to cut through. And those are the two main, ideally the two type of scenarios that you want to be using. And I would say really try to stick with those two. And essentially, if you need help or somebody needs to show you, then safety first. Make sure that you understand how to use those machines before beginning to do so. Okay, so that's safety first. Safety glasses, right? And when you're cutting, so very important.
It's not like wood, so if you rotate a little bit, it will kick back.
It likes to kick back.
Yeah.
So again, right, they all have different ways. Like some of these cut nicer, right? Definitely big difference when you cut this and when you cut the acrylic, right? This cuts like butter. This, it wants to start to, it kind of just slaps its way out because of the teeth. But again, very, very important, and just take it easy, right? Another thing, sometimes you, actually when I'm cutting wood, sometimes I'll go ahead and use an old carpenter's trick, right? We're using painter's tape to basically cover where we're going to cut in order to eliminate any kind of debris on the other side. So that's a good way to have a nice clean cut. We're using for the most part, a standard wood table saw, band saw, excuse me, what is it I'm looking for? The saw that we're using is it's a band saw, but it's about what, 60 teeth?
Yeah.
It's 60 teeth or so.
Well ventilated blade.
Yes.
More, if you go with the clear one, more teeth the better. The other one is not a big deal. It's same as plywood.
Right, because it tends to burn it,
exactly,
right?
Exactly.
If
so
there's
it will
too many
melt
teeth.
While cutting, so that's not what you want. So
right.
That's why you want like.
So we want spaced out teeth, not too spaced out where it's like a 25 tooth or a 40 tooth where they're gonna rip. Right, those are made for ripping. We really want something more like 60, I believe, where again you have enough, but it's not so much that it burns it because you don't have enough time to cut through. So very, very important, and safety first with that, guys. Okay. So back to where we were, right? So once you get that cut, again, we're going to be either installing it from the top. The next option, if you can, is going to be installing it from the underside. So imagine that we're going to be fixing this surface from the bottom side here, and more or less the simplest, most economic way to do that is to be able to use the Aoemt, which is just a very standard pipe clamp. Again, real quickly, if I show you here, again, this is just going to get installed on the bottom side of that right there, so you can see that it's going to be able to basically, now we're going to go ahead and just drill with our bit, which is the one that we want to use here is the one that basically is not going to allow us to pierce all the way through, because we just want enough, we just want to create the void on the underside of this surface so that we can go ahead and accommodate the 1/2-inch screw that is going to be fixed with the Aoemt, okay? So we don't want to pierce through all that and expose that hole. We just really want the void to be created just enough so that we can go ahead and grab all this together, okay? So that is the Aoemt, and normally, again, 1/2 inch or thicker for that type of scenario. And then the other one that we do a lot of here, which is another very common one, is using the AI corners. So basically this setup here where we're going to be having an inset. So now the surface, it's not on the top of the structure, but it's now sitting within the perimeter of your structure. So this is what we're doing. We're installing AI corners, and then we're going to be using a combination of the drill bit, which is the 3/16, because we want to go ahead and pierce through and essentially fix everything together with the AI corner, which is has a hole on the bottom side here, so that we can go ahead and use the bolt method here, bolt and nut, and we're going to pass it through and secure everything together. So that is the three main ways that we're approaching this. Again, there's many different ways, many different scenarios that we're trying to do with the surfaces. I want to mention, like Simone said, is that we want to get rid of the sharp. So we want to make sure that we're going to deburr, right? So we want to use a deburring tool to be able to go ahead and essentially just get rid of any rough edge. So we can see here that we get this little kind of a spaghetti thing going on. So that's a nice clean straight line. Essentially you want to be able to just get one of those along the way and really just keep that nice and steady so that, again, you can just get a nice smooth edge all the way around, or rather get rid of that edge. So again, you want to do that with all the different types. Is there a different way to do that with the acrylic, or is it pretty much the same type of scenario? Or maybe not as hard. Sometimes I feel like I go maybe too hard and I need to maybe just do a little bit lighter on the acrylics.
No, it's harder on this. Another way would be to use a torch.
Okay.
Same thing, just melt.
Just kind of blend that edge.
You need to practice before. Like,
and
I would say practice on a scrap piece because you can burn it pretty quickly. So pretty much you just go, and it will make like a clear edge, same as the top if you if you practice.
I wonder if you could run it with a little sandpaper.
You can.
You could do that as well?
Yeah, you can. Or a buffing wheel.
Okay, right. So anything to get rid of the edge, essentially. Yeah. And it's very important, guys, because the thing is, when you cut yourself with one of these, you don't really realize it until later when you see like the blood kind of dripping, because it's such a fine cut that it takes a little bit for you to realize.
You're eating an orange.
Until you, yeah, exactly. And then you really, or you squeeze a lemon, that's when you feel it. So again, these are the different ways that we're using it. So when we mention all of this, you really have to ask, and it all begins with that, why are we using it? So normally a project manager is going to say, hey, why do you need that surface? Because again, if we don't need that surface, we want to try to get away with it if we can, because if not, some individuals have the tendency when they see a surface to begin to put as many things as they possibly can on that surface in order to see how many things they can actually put. I don't know what the thing is, but this is what happens with surfaces. So, a cool little trick sometimes to avoid those types of things also, Simon, is to maybe, if you can, why not put that surface in an angle in order to prevent items from being placed. So if it's a scenario in which you can do that, again, many different things, so many different ways of thinking about it. But if you needed to have a surface for whatever reason, but you don't want it to be just a table anymore, then again, make it so that things don't stick on it. So that's a good thing there to think about. Safety first when we're dealing with all this. Again, I mentioned we're using drills, we're using bits, right? We're using the 1/8 inch bit to pierce through so that our screws go in. We're using the depth finder, if you will. It's an 1/8 inch bit just with the 1/2 inch as the depth in order to not pierce all the way through. We have the 3/16 bit, which was the one that we're using for our nut and bolt, our 1032 nut and bolt. And that's kind of the idea. And then again, the counter bit, countersink bit. So this is a special one that we have here, but there's many different types. This one is really nice. We can go ahead and adjust the setting pretty quick. But all these exist. Any hardware store is going to have many different kinds of bits that can help you install. Another thing that I want to mention when we're dealing with surfaces, again, we don't want to just freestyle drill holes anywhere. So a good thing to always have in mind, or handy rather, around, is to have clamps. So whether it's a wood clamp, whether it's just a spring clamp that you can hold on to it, whatever the case, you want to make sure that you can go ahead and put things in its place, so that again, if we're drilling through, the last thing I want is to drill through here and then I hit the edge of that tube and it's going to basically just drive my bit completely out of the way, mark my tube. Sometimes maybe if I'm not straight, it breaks. Then that's another issue all on its own. So sometimes we do that because we want to kind of cheat time and get ahead of ourselves. But you know what? I realized that if I take the time to do this, I actually gain time as opposed to when I'm rushing it and I lose time. So really very important.
It's a must if you're cutting.
It's a must. Again, right, if you're cutting surfaces, you have to be able to secure that surface, because the last thing you want is to be chasing a surface with a saw. You don't want to be chasing nothing with a live tool in your hand, okay? So clamps, spring clamps, very, very similar to woodworking. Again, right, what we're doing here with the modular systems is I'm a woodworker background, so for me it was just a transition from wood to the modular tube and joint system, but essentially I'm using most of the time all of the same thought processes that I used in woodworking when applying it to the surfaces. So again, let's think of surfaces. Something that can be placed on the top, surfaces something that can be divided in between surfaces, surfaces that need to essentially be seen through, so we can see clear through it, right? Visual. Surfaces that can hang tools and items in order to be able to visually and right off the bat be able to clearly see these. And I think, is there anything else that I've missed?
Another way you can use that instead of going with the classic pegboard hooks is you put like screws.
Very economic, right?
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Longer ones, and then you just tied it up, and then you have like a
yeah, actually, yeah. So basically what you're saying is we're going to grab 2 of these here. We're going to put them at the space where we need to. We're going to install the nuts here and essentially be able to hang items as well. Why not take it a step further and maybe even add a little bit of a shadow shape to it in order to understand when that tool is not there, and let's go look for it. Let's go see who has it type of thing, right? So shadow boards, fantastic for this, right?
Yep.
And I really like this tool or this thought here, because again, these are things that everybody has lying around in the shop, right? A bolt and a nut. And so if you don't have to go find something, you can go ahead and essentially make it yourself.
Get pricey.
And right, exactly. And these, everyone, you know, you can have these, exactly, those specialized hooks. Now, there might be a moment in which you do need one of those, but again, if you can figure out how you can get away with you know, economizing the most as you can. Again, that's the name of the game right now is basically how economical it can be, but at the same time, let's make sure that it does have a purpose and it does complete its purpose, right? So I always say basically all our structures, or rather everything form follows function in everything I'm trying to do. So I really want to make sure that that surface is the ideal surface for that particular scenario. So just to recap again, right? So we have the 1/2 inch, we have the 1/4 inch, and we have the 1/8 inch in the HDPE, the high density polyurethane. I like to say that every once in a while just to practice the vocal. But again, that's the main gist of it. From there, if you need more specialized, also we have the 1/8 inch HDPE with the Aluminium Cladding. Is that the official name? Yep. We tend to call these Comaloo around here, but that's more in-house. But again, it's an 1/8 inch HDPE with the aluminum exterior. So very easy to clean as well.
That you can cut with an X-Acto knife.
Which you can use, exactly. You can go ahead and cut and ply and score it, exactly. And then again, I think that pretty much all of these, you can use dry erase markers and be able to write and clean. Just don't let them sit there for 6 months and then pretend that it's going to wipe off like smoothly. But definitely, you know, if you give it a quick little spray of just a little bit of water and you mentioned,
or the special spray they have
just for the dry, right, for the dry markers and things like that. But again, it just comes off nice and easy, very cool, great for light boxes. I recently made a woodworker sandbox in which I use this in order to be able to sand and basically absorb everything on the bottom, and then we can flip it over, and the other side had actually a surface to work. So many different ways, and you can get super creative with this. So I think that's it. We're going to go ahead and now jump over to the live questions. So we're going to go ahead and answer any questions that anybody may have. So again, this would be the moment to go ahead and think about those questions, and we'll see you there.
All right, guys, thank you guys for hanging out with during that presentation there. I hope that everybody got to learn a little bit something, or maybe found a tip or trick that maybe can help them out in the future. We're going to go ahead and answer any questions that are left. If you guys have any other questions, we'll take about 5 to 10 minutes to answer those. If you want, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and speak out loud if you will, or if you want, you can go ahead and just go through the chat as we have been doing through the presentation. So again, just to recap all these surfaces, there are many different ways of using them. Again, you can always find more different ways to use them. So I'm always, I like to consider myself a student of the game as well. So if you find another great use for any type of surface, I would definitely love to be able to hear from you guys. And let's go see what we let's go check out the questions right now. So let's have a look. Having a hard time here. Let me see if I can find the questions. Oh, there we go. All right. Do you recommend, one of the questions here is, do you recommend only using the Aoemt underneath the polycarbonate sheet versus drilling straight into it? Either way, when we're using those Aoemts, we definitely, or rather surfaces really, we want to go ahead and create pilot holes in the surfaces to essentially get rid or create a void, create a hole in which we're going to want to have the screw go into. So if we do not create a pilot hole, it's going to be very difficult. Sometimes we're going to burn the plastic and the screw is going to begin to kind of spin. Essentially, it's not going to be able to grab onto anything. So we definitely want to create a pilot hole when we're attaching the Aoemts to any type of surface. If it's a surface that's a ½ inch thick and you want to go ahead and install that screw, just make sure that you're not piercing it all the way through, so that it's just a small void in order to fill in the length of the screw, as opposed to screwing all the way through and then having an exposed end on the other side of that surface, if that makes sense. All right, so as far as the bits and that we're normally using, again, we're going to be standard wise, we're going to always have we definitely want to have the 1/8 inch bit handy. The 1/8 inch bit is going to help us when we're dealing with installing the ½ inch, the 5/8, and the 1 inch screws that we're using, depending on what we're doing. So we want to use the 1/8 inch bit. Sometimes we're gonna go ahead and make a little bit of a bigger hole if we need to have a screw sitting a little bit more loose. Then we can go ahead and opt for the 3/16 or for the 1/4 inch bit. Primarily, though, you always want to have that 1/8 inch bit around, and then it's not a bad idea to have just an extra one in case that one ends up breaking off, or again, right, we're dealing with a circular pipe, so sometimes if you don't have it clamped correctly, you might break off that tip. So it's just good to have 1/8 inch bits around. So that's really the main one. But then again, from there, 3/16 and a 1/4 inch bit will help if you're doing other types of installations with bigger bolts that may need to have a bigger hole in order to pass through. So again, if you're using the AI corners and some of the other accessories, they do have a little bigger hole. So it just really depends on the bolt. But 1/8 inch, 3/16, and a 1/4 inch will do you good. All right, so again, let's see, then again, if you leave your email, we'll go ahead and make sure to get that information out, and then we can send you the information that we've used in the webinar. So again, we can send that out to you, and then you'll have all that as well, where you can go ahead and save it wherever you like to. The countersink bit, that's very important too. It definitely, you want to have a countersink bit. Especially with when it's all about aesthetics, and it's all about making sure that that surface does what it needs to do. Again, so you don't want to have screw heads interfering with your job. So make sure to use a countersink bit just to have a nice flat finish, a nice flush finish with the surface.
Hey Esteban, do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I wanted to show you guys this. Remember Mark from Q5? They're playing a lot with Hdpe. They're making they're I don't know if you see it well, but basically they're using it to make sides at the end of the table, so you can just bend the plastic. And I thought it was quite interesting when they showed me this. So they're
Is
just
it
past. Yeah.
is it pliable? Are you able to bend it and
Yeah, yeah,
it's still one piece? Okay.
exactly. That's what. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. So at the end of the table, they would bend the HDPE plastic and make like a nice side. So I thought it would be interesting. Obviously, they play around a lot with
Yeah,
they
that's
use
cool.
1/2 inch. Yeah.
All right, so
So
they're using they're using kind of like a dado blade in order to create that channel. So they're
yeah,
essentially still using that one piece and just bending the borders, if you will. Nice.
exactly. So
All right. Well, that takes a little bit more knowledge for sure. Then you got to maybe deal with dado blades. But yeah, that's definitely really nice. I appreciate the craftsmanship in this for sure.
I don't know if you mentioned about the tools to sharp for the hedge. How do you call that again? I'll put that in the chat. The little pencil just to
The
make the
deburring
edge.
tool.
Yeah, exactly. The deburring
Yeah,
tool.
deburring tool. We want to clean those edges for sure. They get sharp, and I guess
Yeah.
oftentimes when you realize it, it's already too late, kind of thing. So make sure you get to that as quick as possible, so you don't end up slicing off something.
Exactly. I think you mentioned as well in the webinar, but using the aluminum clad, one of the big advantage is you don't need a bandsaw. I mean, you don't need a table saw, and you could have like pretty much anyone with a ruler and an X-Acto starting to work. So I've seen clients only using the clad, but like you said, you have to frame it properly, but then all the safety hazard that comes with the table, so you don't have it anymore, and then you could have any operator start building and have the clad cut their own clad. So I think that's a huge advantage of having of using that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing you say, because I hadn't really used it in that sense before up until recently. And actually, Simone was the one that kind of showed me the light, and I was like, oh yeah, that's true. So basically, the 1/8 inch aluminum cladding comalu that we're used to calling. Yeah, you have a straight edge, and then you just create that, you score that, and then you can bend it the opposite end, and it's going to have a real nice clean bend, kind of like the way you set up the boxes or those pre-assembled boxes, right? You can put it in and make a nice shape out of that, and it's all one piece essentially. So it's really cool to do, and I think we should be probably doing one of those videos to also show everybody else in the future how to do that as well, so it's a better, cleaner image of what we're trying to talk to. But definitely a good idea with the comalu. All right, so if you have anybody else, any questions? If not, then we'll go ahead and get ready to wrap up. But before, as I'm wrapping it up, I just want to let's see here. We got a question from last one here. Do you guys have any? Okay, so yes, we do offer, one of the questions here from Gustavo Gallo is, do we have any type of training on how to use the Flexpipe extension? Again, we're dealing with the Flexpipe extension, which is a add-on that we use with the SketchUp software. And yes, we are definitely able to do trainings. We offer online training. We do web sessions where you can go ahead and pick a particular subject, or we can also do in-house or in-house trainings at Flexpipe or away trainings at your facility. So the best way here would be to, let me go ahead and put the link in order to book a date. And essentially it's just basically booking a date, finding an opening time in the schedule, which I'm gonna go ahead and post right now.
I just posted.
Oh, you did there. Okay,
yeah,
good.
sorry.
So that's it.
Yeah.
So the web training link is there. It's just hang on, just go ahead and click on that, and then you can basically just find a time slot that works for you. And then that's it. We'll take it from there. But we do 45-minute sessions, and then we can explain everything that you may need to know in order to help you on your process with designing. All right, so again, if you need anything else, this is the link in which you can go get a hold of me, the web training. So if you have anything regarding assembly or design, this is where you can go ahead and find me. So don't be shy, you know where I am. Thank you guys for showing up and being part of the webinar. And then again, if you have any future topics that you would like to hear, learn more about, go ahead and drop them off to us, send us an email or a comment, whichever way. And we'll go ahead and try to make another webinar based on those subjects that you may want. And then that's it for today, guys. Take care, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Esteban. Good job.
Bye. Take care.